You ever get that feeling like life is just one big lesson after another?
You mean like we're always learning?
Yeah, exactly. Even when we're not really trying, like maybe that feeling is pointing to something bigger, you know?
The deeper truth about being alive.
Yeah, like that. Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into all sorts of information and see if we can find what really matters.
And today, we're diving into a pretty profound idea. There's some sources you shared with us.
Right, it's this concept of merging with God, like it's some kind of natural next step, almost like we're all in this, what did it call it? The spiritual school.
Exactly. It's like we're all
Hmm.
students. You sent us a text called Merging with God, specifically verse 9 from chapter 4.
Right.
And you also included a related teaching. It's teaching 54, also verse 9 of chapter 4.
Yeah.
And the title is Knower of Brahman Becomes Brahman. You were hoping we could help you figure out where you fit in this whole spiritual school idea.
Yeah, and what this merging with God actually means, according to these texts. So, where do we even start?
Well, I think the place to start is with this analogy of the world as a school.
Yeah, it's such a striking image, right?
It is, and it's right there in the Merging with God text.
So, what does it even mean to see everything, our whole existence, through this lens of a spiritual school?
Well, the text takes this really familiar idea of school
Hmm.
and uses it to explain this journey we're all on.
Okay.
It says all living beings are essentially students,
Hmm.
and we're in this lifelong process of learning and growing and evolving.
And the ultimate goal, the reason we're in this school, is to understand, to learn and grow in a way that leads to merging with God.
Exactly. And the classroom, this spiritual school where all this happens, is our world.
Okay.
And the text goes even further.
How so?
It brings in this idea of school grades, just like in regular school, different beings are at different levels of understanding.
So some of us are in kindergarten, spiritually speaking, while others are off in college courses.
Right? It's like we're all on this structured path of progression. The text even talks about different rungs or grades of spiritual understanding.
So just like a little kid in kindergarten sees the world completely differently than a college student, the people around us are all at different points in this like spiritual curriculum.
Exactly. That's the point the text is making. But here's the really powerful part. Just like every student eventually graduates, everyone in this spiritual school, everyone, is on a path that will eventually lead them to merge with God.
So it's not just a possibility, it's like the natural end result of all this learning.
Right. It's presented as the destination for every being within this framework.
That's wild.
And there's another interesting point the text makes. Just like a school is always full of students, except maybe for holidays or breaks, this spiritual school is never empty. There are always beings moving through these different stages.
Okay, but there are times when a school is empty, right?
Right, the text says the only time this spiritual school, this world, is empty is during cosmic dissolution. It makes you think about how huge this whole process is.
It really does kind of change how you see everything.
Yeah.
So, where do you think you are in all of this? If this really is some kind of cosmic classroom, what grade are you in?
I don't know. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
For sure. But the text doesn't just talk about the spiritual school itself, it also gets into how we move through the grades, so to speak.
Right, it's not just about being here. It's about learning and actually growing.
So, how does that work? How do we advance in this spiritual school?
Well, the text says our understanding, it deepens through all the experiences we have in each lifetime. Each time we're born, we collect new impressions. We develop preferences, we gather knowledge, and all of that becomes the building blocks for the next level of understanding.
So, it's like each life is a new year of school, and we're building on what we learned in the previous years. Even if we can't remember all the details, it's all still there, influencing who we are and how we see things.
That's a good way to put it.
Mm.
And the text uses this really great example to illustrate how this learning unfolds. It talks about understanding the concept of babies being born, where babies come from.
Right.
A little kid, a teenager, and an adult, they all understand that in completely different ways.
Right. What's totally normal and obvious for an adult might be completely mind-blowing for a kid.
Exactly. And that same principle applies to this spiritual school.
Mm-hmm.
What we think is the complete picture right now might just be a small piece of a much bigger puzzle.
That's kind of a humbling thought, actually.
It is. And it leads us to another point the text makes. At any given stage, we tend to think our understanding is complete.
Like we aced the final exam, so we know it all.
Right, exactly. But the text says that's not how it works. It says This journey of learning keeps going until we reach the ultimate truth.
Mm.
It really makes you think about all the things you've learned in your life, things you used to believe that you don't anymore.
Yeah, like how our understanding of ourselves, the world, everything, it's always evolving.
Yeah.
And speaking of limitations in our understanding, there's that example the text uses about childless couples.
Right. It's an interesting example.
Yeah, because we have all this knowledge about how babies are made, all this science and stuff, but there are still couples who can't have children.
It's a good illustration of how, even in areas where we think we know a lot, there are still mysteries. There are things even the experts can't fully explain.
And that kind of shows us that our understanding, even when it's really advanced, still has its limits.
Right. And that's where the Vedas come in. According to the text, the Vedas are the source of the ultimate truth.
Okay.
They're the key to understanding everything completely, including the nature of, well, what the text refers to as Brahman, the divine, essentially.
And the text acknowledges that different people understand the divine in different ways.
Yeah, and it says that all those different perspectives are valid for the people who hold them.
But it also says there are things that can get in the way of fully grasping the truth, like maybe limitations in our intelligence or our attitude.
Right. But the text is really compassionate about it. It suggests that we don't need to go around pointing out to people that their understanding is incomplete.
Right.
It's like, why discourage someone who's learning, especially when we know they'll eventually figure things out on their own as they continue to grow?
It's like not telling a first grader that they don't understand quantum physics.
Exactly. So we've talked about this spiritual school idea, the levels of understanding, the limitations we all face, and how we learn and grow. But what's the point of all this? What's the ultimate goal?
Well, the text is pretty clear about that. It's merging with God. But it emphasizes that this merging isn't some kind of physical journey to a different place.
Right. It's more like an awakening, a realization.
So, okay, can you unpack that a little more?
Sure. The text explains that all the impressions we gather, all those experiences from past lives, they're actually what keep us stuck in the cycle of rebirth.
Okay.
But when we gain true knowledge of the divine, it burns away those accumulated impressions.
Like fire-consuming fuel.
Exactly. There's nothing left to keep the cycle going.
So when we die, having achieved this ultimate knowledge, there's no more rebirth. We merge with God.
Right. And the text actually quotes Teaching 54 here. It says, "He who thus knows, in true light, my divine birth and action, having abandoned the body, he is not born again. He comes to me."
And what does comes to me mean in this context?
The text says it means merging with God.
So it's not about going somewhere. It's about realizing something.
Right. It's about understanding our true nature, recognizing that we've always been one with the divine. Think of it this way. You're already connected. The merging is just you finally seeing and understanding that connection.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground here. This whole idea of the world as a spiritual school, this continuous process of learning and evolving through our experiences.
And we talked about how our understanding grows over time, the limitations we all have, and how the Vedas offer a path to the ultimate truth.
Right. And this idea that merging with God isn't about traveling to some distant place, but about realizing a unity that already exists.
And that realization, that's the ultimate goal of this whole spiritual school experience, according to the sources you provided.
It's a lot to think about. So if this is all true, if we really are students in this cosmic classroom, how does that change how you see your daily life?
Yeah. How does it affect your approach to learning new things, to having new experiences, knowing that ultimately it's all about achieving this profound understanding and this deep connection with the divine?
It definitely gives you a new way to look at things, doesn't it?
It does. So maybe the next lesson in your spiritual school journey is to sit with this idea for a while.
See if it changes your perspective, even a little bit.
And if you find your understanding shifting, well, that's the whole point, isn't it? That's how we move forward in this grand spiritual school we call life.
That's something to think about.
Definitely.
And that's the deep dive for this time. Thanks for joining us as we explore these fascinating ideas together.
Until next time.
Take care.
Bye.